wide. Muller gets it, and he gets plenty of it, does he? No! What a catch! Oh my God! I don't believe what I've just seen.
This past June marked an historic event in the United States. For the first time ever, the U.S. hosted the International Cricket Council's Men T20 World Cup. Now, this is one of the biggest events in cricket. It's akin to soccer's World Cup or the Super Bowl. With more than 2 billion cricket fans worldwide, cricket is the second most popular sport in the world. Top cricket-playing nations include Australia, South Africa, England, Ireland, Barbados, Jamaica, Afghanistan, and many countries in South Asia. And the most highly anticipated match this season? India versus Pakistan.
Well, it is one of the biggest sports matchups in the world, and it took place right in our area today. We're talking about India versus Pakistan facing off in a
two legendary cricket-loving nations whose decades-long history makes them the biggest rivalry in sports. Nearly 124 million people in the U.S. tuned in to watch this year's Super Bowl, with another 62.5 million watching internationally. But the viewership for India versus Pakistan was projected to be at least 400 million in India alone, reaching potentially 600 million people worldwide. Like any and every match between India and Pakistan, this was a high-stakes game. Since the partition of India in 1947, which created Pakistan, the two nations have had a tense relationship. Throughout the years, this tension has often led to war. And even during times of peace, the two countries duke out their disagreements in the Oval.
We're in the Big Apple. It's India versus Pakistan. And coming up, box office, one of the biggest contests in all of sport.
India's most recent World Cup win was in 2007 and Pakistan's in 2009. So the question heading into the World Cup this year was, will either nation return to the top? The Nassau County Stadium is packed with tens of thousands of spectators dressed in green for Pakistan or blue for India.
In the blue corner, ready to punch, Rohit Sharma. Ready to counter punch in the green corner, Babar Azam.
The game begins with a coin toss.
Pakistan have won the toss and they've decided to bowl first.
Pakistan wins and decides to field first, which makes India the batting team. Anticipation builds as it starts to rain, and the players must wait it out through a rain delay. Finally, Pakistan's Shaheen Shah Afridi bowls the first ball.
See the ball hardly traveling. Oh, what a shot. It's up in the air. It's a magnificent strike for six. Wow. If ever there was a pickup shot, this is the one. It's played magnificently.
Pakistan's bowling is pretty solid. Pakistan's bowlers toss fastballs that sling right past India's batsmen. And when finally a batsman hits, Pakistan catches one ball after another, and catching a ball means the batter is out. Soon, India is out after scoring 119 runs, which is a low total. Pakistan fans are feeling pretty good. And now the teams switch sides, with Pakistan batting and India bowling. And it's with this switch that India makes a tremendous comeback.
That's well ball, India win. That's a tremendous comeback. Pakistan didn't have a lot to chase, but India made it so tough from 80 for 3 after 14 overs. Bumrah came in and absolutely halted the progress of this Pakistan innings. That is what
in the end, after 3 hours, India beats Pakistan by 6 runs. It's a heartbreaking loss for Team Pakistan, who lost incredulously to the American cricket team just 3 days before. This match between India and Pakistan is only the latest chapter in a long and storied history between the two countries. Hey everyone, this is your host Kavitha Davidson, and welcome to the first episode of Sportly. This is a brand new podcast from Immigrantly Media, where we talk about sports and the impact they've had on our world. You see, sports aren't just about the game, they're so much more. The battleground where countries fight out their political differences. They're a safe outlet for people to release their aggression. And they're a bearer of passion, a source of hope and excitement. Sports are also an economy all their own, making billions worldwide. And of course, sports are inextricably tied to some of our most important cultural and political moments in history. Each week on Sportly, we're going to dive into fascinating stories that go beyond the typical stats and data. We'll get into iconic players who exceeded expectations, historical moments that changed the game forever, and the sheer power behind sports and popular culture. So, if you're someone who doesn't regularly tune into sports talk shows, or someone who only watches the Super Bowl for the commercials and the halftime show, I see you. I'm here to explain things to you. And for our very first episode, what better way to start than with a sport that definitely covers politics, pop culture, history, and community? Yep, our first episode is all about cricket. Now, for my fellow Americans, maybe this seems a little unexpected. You know, cricket hasn't been that popular in the States since really before the Civil War. Many Americans aren't all that familiar with cricket, frankly, myself included. But don't be fooled. Cricket is the second most popular sport worldwide, with about 2.5 billion fans, topped only by soccer. And it's the most popular sport in South Asia. As we hinted at in the intro, one of the most popular and intense sports rivalries in the world is the cricket rivalry between India and Pakistan. It's been more than 70 years since partition, the violent separation of British India into the independent nations we know them as today. Since then, the two nations have played against each other about 200 times and counting. Each game garners millions of impassioned eyes across the region. I can tell you personally that my parents, who are from India and have lived in the States for more than 40 years, they're never more excited than when they get to watch cricket on their TV at home. And during last month's World Cup, my dad in particular, who frankly doesn't really care about sports outside of cricket, he'd text me regularly to update me on just how India was doing.
Handsome from Georgine. Is my trip six to finish the...
So how did we get here? How did this sport, which started out in the small, hilly countryside of England, become South Asia's favorite sport? In this episode, we'll trace cricket's origin story from England to British India. Then, we'll dig into the rise of the sport in South Asian pop culture, from sports heroes whose names still ring familiar, to big studio films, and even to cricket's economy, which has raked in billions of dollars worldwide. It's a pretty fascinating and complex story of colonization, popular media, celebrities, and international rivalry. So, to kick us off, let's wind the clock back several hundred years. It's the 13th century in the English countryside. Near a sheep paddock, a group of children are playing a game. One boy starts rolling a makeshift ball towards the gates of the paddock. This ball would have been a stone or maybe a ball of rags and wool. Another boy stands in front of the gates. He's holding a shepherd's staff, a long, sturdy piece of wood with a hooked end like a cane. With this staff, he whacks the ball away from his goal. This fun and easy child's game is cricket's humble origin. Over the next 100 years, this kid's pastime grows in popularity among adults. Matches begin attracting small audiences. People place bets on the winner. Villages form their own teams and play against other villages close by. Slowly but surely, cricket is becoming an organized sport. By the mid to late 1700s, notable English cricket clubs standardized the sport with the laws of cricket.
Cricket, of course, doesn't even have rules. It has laws, and that immediately strikes some people as pompous and self-regarding.
Those laws were mostly written in 19th century London, at a pitch still considered the home of cricket, called Lord's.
Well, this is Lord's, deeply rooted in tradition and in the ritual tradition brings.
A standard game goes like this. On the field is a pitch, a rectangle of dirt in the middle of a grassy field. On either end of the pitch lies a wicket, a set of 3 narrow wooden stumps driven into the ground. The batting team sends 2 batsmen to stand on either side of the pitch in front of each wicket. Like the pitcher in baseball, there's a bowler in cricket who tosses the ball to the active batsman, who then hits the ball out into the field. While the ball is in play, the batsmen run across the pitch, passing each other back and forth to score runs. Meanwhile, the other team are the fielders. They surround the batsmen in various positions across the field, like in baseball. The fielder's goal is to stop the batsmen from scoring runs. Now, this can happen in a few ways, like by catching the ball in play or hitting the wickets with the ball before the running batsmen make it to the other side. It's helpful for me to think of cricket in baseball terms, so imagine the batter running the bases. After he puts the ball in play, he has to make it to first base before the players on the field touch that base with the ball. In the end, the team that scores the most runs wins the match. Now, this is a really basic explanation. After all, cricket is no child's game anymore. The laws of cricket are dense, especially since games can last up to 5 days. These 5 days tend to build excitement. In the late 1700s and early 1800s, cricket teams across towns, or even whole counties, expand even more. Competition is a great way to rally people around a common goal. It builds community within one's village, especially if the crowd knows how to play too. And sure enough, cricket is securing its place as a beloved English pastime. Now, while cricket was growing in England, the British were steadily expanding across the globe. In the early 1600s, the first British ships docked in India, a valuable trading location known for its spices. It may come as a surprise, but the British didn't actually have colonization in mind, at least not at first. These early Brits came as fellow traders. They were hunting for spices and silk, cotton, tea, and indigo dye. But because trade and commerce were nowhere near as technologically accessible as they are today, British traders and mariners were spending long stretches of time away from home. And one of the ways they would spend their time was by playing cricket. British traders played cricket regularly while on Indian soil, as locals nearby watched with curiosity. As the decades passed, the British ramped up their political and economic power. 1858 marks the official start of British-ruled India, or the British Raj. Colonial rule enforced a British culture that mixed into local traditions and ways of life. For India, cricket gradually latched onto the population with just as much excitement as it did for the young countrymen of England. The sport was a good source of entertainment. But cricket was also a connection to the British, who controlled the country. Indian princes supported cricket matches to get into the good graces of British leaders. In other words, involvement in cricket was a good way to score political capital with an imperializing force. And cricket was pretty accessible. You could play without a ton of equipment in pretty much any open field. So, Indian communities formed their own cricket clubs. Most sources credit an ethnic group in India called the Parsis with forming the first Indian cricket clubs. They played local matches against each other and encouraged the birth of other Indian cricket clubs in the years to come. And then, in the 1890s, India witnessed the rise of one of the greatest cricket batsmen in history. Many now call him the father of Indian cricket. It's Sir Ranjit Singh Vibhaji. Born in the Indian state of Navanagar in 1872, Ranji learned cricket as a young boy of about 10 or 11, playing casual games at school. In 1890, he went to England to attend school at Cambridge University, and there is where he really honed his cricket skills. By 1895, he was playing first-class cricket for Britain's Sussex team. Now, Ranji wasn't just any player. He had a unique batting style, a style English audiences thought was pretty unorthodox. During Ranji's time, the game had 100 years worth of formal rules and many centuries worth of informal norms and expectations. So to see somebody boldly push past those expectations, well, it drew attention to Ranji. And in the end, it worked out in his favor. A few years after joining the Sussex cricket team, Ranji broke batting records left and right. For 4 years, he served as team captain, and his new batting style eventually led to many different batting strokes still used today. And despite being an Indian on the team, Ranji would continue to be a highly regarded cricketer for England. Ranji's title as the father of Indian cricket has become a bit controversial. Ranji played for the British, so he never actually played for India or on an India-based team. But at the very least, his stardom has left a mark on cricket's legacy. Soon after Ranji's fame in England, we saw the rise of all Indian cricket clubs playing for India. These clubs started playing regular matches in India and the UK throughout the early 20th century. In 1926, the ICC invited India to join as an official member. This landmark moment would be India's official induction into international cricket games. And in June of 1932, a team of all Indian players debuted in its first internationally sanctioned match against the British.
Hema Singh has scored his 50. Incidentally, the top score for his side during this match. India are all out with a total of 187. England win by 158 runs.
This match marks the start of India's official cricket presence. Over a decade after India's first official ICC match, cricket history witnessed another crucial pivot in 1947. This year marks two major events. One, India's independence from Britain. Independence came after many decades of political resistance to the British Crown. Like many colonized nations, India sought democratic rule of their own country and their own people. The Indian Independence Act was passed in 1947.
At the stroke of the midnight hour, when the world sleeps, India will awake to life and freedom.
Pakistan Broadcasting Service, हम लाहौर से बोल रहे हैं। 13 और 14 अगस्त सन 47 ईस्वी की दरमियानी रात 12 बजे है।
And as for cricket, even though the sport originated in Britain, some say that cricket became a source of anti-colonial pride, that is, beating the British at their own game. But this independence marks another major event, as we talked about in the intro, partition, which violently divided the region into a Hindu-majority India and a Muslim-majority Pakistan. This deadly separation claimed at least 2 to 3 million lives due to violence, hunger, and disease. 14 million more people were uprooted and displaced to either side of the new border. In the midst of violence, Pakistan went on to achieve its own official ICC membership a few years later. And soon after Pakistan's membership, they played against India in their very first ICC match as two new independent nations. It's 1952. 16 men have traveled from Pakistan to play in New Delhi for the match today. Leading them is 27-year-old Abdul Hafiz Kardar. Now, if you had met Kardar years ago, you actually would have found him playing for India. Yes, this Pakistani cricketer used to play on behalf of India while playing against the British before partition. A man named Lala Amarnath Bhardwaj leads the Indian home team, and funny enough, he's got connections with the other side too. Bhardwaj grew up in a poor Hindu family. As a young boy, he grew up playing cricket in the streets of Lahore. Lahore is now a city in present-day Pakistan, but before 1947, it was all part of British India. And it was here, in British-occupied Lahore, that a Muslim family noticed a poor young boy playing cricket and took him into their home. And they helped him develop his cricket skills. Now, this young boy is a 41-year-old man, playing on behalf of India as their first cricket captain since independence. Before the game begins, the president of India greets the players of each team. And then it's time for the first inning. 11 from Pakistan's team and 11 from India's team enter the field. Now, like I said, Test cricket matches can last many days, and this one's no different. After 4 days, there's finally a winner: India.
Thus, India won the first Test match by an innings and 70 runs.
This may be the first time these two nations play together, but it's far from the last. Over the next 2 months, these two nations compete in 5 Test matches across India. India wins the series overall 2-1 with 2 draws. But Pakistan has 1 win in the second match. Now, playing on a field surrounded by Indian fans, it's not hard to imagine the Pakistani team feeling a bit uneasy about their win. I mean, could this erupt into another bout of anger and hostility? Well, while the Indian audience was likely disappointed and probably angry, something amazing happens instead. The governor of the Indian state of Uttar Pradesh, where this match was held, hosts a reception for the Pakistani victors. In the decades that follow, India and Pakistan build a rivalry like no other. Both national teams are fierce competitors. Throughout the 50s and 60s, Test matches between these two nations end in draw after draw. Now, the shadow of partition looms large between these two nations. Many years witness war and conflict and strict policies from one side of the border to the other. In the 60s and 70s, wars between India and Pakistan halted cricket games between the two countries for 17 years. The teams started playing each other again in 1978, and after that, cricket's popularity just skyrocketed in both nations. For one thing, many people could now watch the sport on TV, which was frankly much more exciting than reading about it in the paper or listening to it on the radio. At the same time, the landscape of international cricket continued to grow with the introduction of the World Cup in 1975. India would win its first World Cup in 1983. The last quarter of the 20th century also saw a rise in star players, and television helped elevate them to an unprecedented level of cricket fame in both their home countries and on the international stage.
Back into the attack with 4 overs left to go. He'll be bowling to Gordon Greenwich.
And a big appeal there for LBW. He's gone. Imran strikes with the first ball of his new spell. Traps Gordon Greenwich, LBW.
Imran Khan is the bowler. He's bowling to Fowler.
And the first wicket down. Imran Khan, the great Pakistan all-rounder, has combined with Anil Galpat to take the first wicket out of Graham Fowler.
What a superb catch.
In Pakistan, Imran Khan was becoming a celebrity. Born in 1952 in Lahore, Imran grew up in an affluent Pakistani family. His older cousins were already established cricketers, so the sport was quite a familiar pastime in his home. By the time he was 20 years old, he was both an Oxford student and a professional Test cricketer.
Pakistan win the World Cup. A magnificent performance in front of 87,000 people. Imran Khan has led his side to victory. What a great victory.
Throughout the 70s and 80s, he built a reputation as both a talented bowler and batsman. This makes him an all-rounder. In baseball parlance, a 5-tool player, someone who excels in multiple positions. Now, it wasn't just his talent that scored Imran both national and international fans. He was, and still is, a good-looking and charismatic guy, known as a heartthrob and even a bit of a playboy. British newspapers gossiped about Imran charming actresses, businesswomen, and socialites in London nightclubs. Romantic rendezvous aside, Imran Khan's talent only continued to grow. At 40 years old, after 20 years in the professional cricket world, Imran led Pakistan to its first ever World Cup victory in 1992.
Pakistan win the World Cup. A magnificent performance in front of 87,000 people. Imran Khan has led his side to victory.
In India, Sachin Tendulkar was quickly becoming one of the finest cricket batsmen the sport has ever seen. Born in 1973, Sachin started playing professional cricket at only 16 years old, making him the youngest cricketer at the time playing for India.
Oh, he's hit that for six. Oh, it's a beauty. It's out the ground. Sachin Tendulkar has hooked Tadek.
He was pretty talented right off the bat. At the international level, Sachin became quickly known for his supreme skills as a batsman. He still holds the record for the most runs scored in a single year in a type of cricket called ODI, a shorter form of the sport that lasts just one day. Now, like Imran Khan, Sachin's name and reputation have extended the bounds of his home country. And in 2011, toward the end of Sachin's career, he was a member of India's World Cup winning team, India's first World Cup win in almost 30 years. Now, as for cricket's notable players, many have grown to be more than just star athletes. They've also become politicians and business leaders, and even heads of state. In 2018, Imran Khan was elected Prime Minister of Pakistan.
Imran Khan's Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, or the PTI, is leading with 118 seats. In fact, it looks like the former cricketer is all set to lead the country next. He might be the next Prime Minister. He's scheduled to address the media this evening.
In the last few decades, it's become clear that cricket is no longer the quiet countryside sporting event that it once was. Now, in South Asia, it's also about pop culture, celebrity, rivalry, and entertainment. Like in 2001, India released the almost 4-hour-long film Lagan, which tells the fictional story of Indian villagers playing cricket against the British Army.
Run it!
It's set during the 1890s when Britain still controlled India. After the British impose a high land tax on one Indian village, the people attempt to resist the new policy. Eventually, the British challenged the villagers to a game of cricket. The catch is that at the time, cricket was still really new to India, and the villagers didn't know how to play. But the stakes are so high. If the villagers can beat the British, the tax will be repealed.
Now, what is this we hear? That you have agreed to cancel the tax of the farmers in Champaner if they beat you in a game of cricket. Is this true?
Yes, Colonel Boyser. It is.
What on earth do you think you're here for?
The film reminds us that cricket in South Asia was born out of colonization, but it also speaks to the national pride that cricket demonstrates today. And it's a reminder of how sports like cricket can take a classic David and Goliath story while ultimately evening things out, at least on the scoreboard. Recent years have seen yet another explosive force rising up in cricket, which would usher in a new era in the South Asian cricket economy, and that's the Indian Premier League.
No matter which time zone you're in, over the next 51 days, it's only one time, and that is to celebrate cricket's biggest festival. Welcome to the Vivo Indian Premier League.
Debuting in 2008, the IPL holds a tournament between 10 domestic teams each year. The teams compete in T20 cricket. This is the shortest form of cricket, lasting only about 3 hours, which makes for exciting, fast-paced games that are well-suited for TV and streaming. The IPL has certainly made great use of this faster form of cricket. The IPL is known for bringing spectacle and entertainment to matches. Music, dancers, and performers turn this sporting event into a sporting experience. The IPL has now completely revolutionized India's role in international cricket, and that's because the IPL is a huge moneymaker. First and foremost, anywhere from 400 to 700 million devoted fans tune into IPL games each season. And as a league, the IPL is currently valued at around $11 billion. TV and streaming corporations like Disney and Paramount are also spending billions of dollars for the rights to broadcast these games to millions of fans. Yeah, 2 US-based parent companies own the rights to broadcast a foreign sport outside American borders, which just goes to show you how global and profitable the cricket industry has become. And just how global is the IPL? Though the teams are domestically based in India, the league attracts cricketers from across the globe, with players from Australia, England, the Caribbean, South Africa. But there's one country that the IPL doesn't recruit talent from, and that's Pakistan. Now, obviously, Pakistan has no shortage of talented players, and Pakistan has its own domestic league, the Pakistan Super League, or PSL. The PSL was founded in 2015 and has 6 city-based teams. But one of the reasons that the IPL doesn't allow players from Pakistan is because back in 2008, a group of 10 men from a militant organization based in Pakistan attacked a hotel in Mumbai, killing 170 people. Since then, India has banned Pakistani athletes from joining the IPL. So just like in decades before, the political tension and histories between these two nations have spilled over into the sport they both love. When it comes to India and Pakistan, the good news is that cricket's popularity is more than just a rivalry. There's hope that cricket can also usher in some diplomacy and peace between the two nations. Now, the expectation isn't that cricket will single-handedly solve problems that are over half a century old. But at the very least, cricket is as good a place to start as any. It opens up communication based on healthy competition and provides a space to find commonalities, whether it's a shared history of colonization or a shared love for the sport that grew from it. And by the way, India did return to the top this year, emerging victorious in the World Cup after defeating South Africa.
It's in the air, it's India who win the T20 World Cup after 17 years. The drought is over.
The story of South Asian cricket continues to be written. Thank you all so much for listening to this first episode of Sportly. You can catch me next week and every week after that for another new and exciting conversation. And in the spirit of community and the uniting power of sports, I want to hear from you. We're all about interesting sports stories, both past and present. So if you have a story you'd like us to cover, an underrated athlete, or a fun fact about your favorite sport that you want to share, let us know. You can reach me at Kavitha at immigrantlypod.com. Thanks so much for listening to Sportly. Sportly is an Immigrantly media production. This episode was produced by Sadia Khan, written by Michaela Struther, and me, Kavitha Davidson. The editorial review by Shay Yu. Our sound designer and editor is Paroma Chakravarti. Our theme music was created by Simon Hutchinson. Other music is by Epidemic Sound. Tune back in next week and every week for more Sportly.